Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ari and Big Mike are proud to present the greatest podcast in the world. No snowflakes allowed, and summer is coming.
You had me worried there, Mike.
I know. You like that dramatic pause. I had to do it this time.
Well, I was not sure you were going to make it all the way through, but
You know, we can be amazed at my abilities at some points. So it's.
I think this is the point where I say it's the podcast that was started by two guys on cigar night. What do you got for us today, Mike?
All right.
We're still doing Queers for Palestine
This
and
is-
how that makes sense to a certain point of view. So
Yes, we got part 3 going on. And I'm going to read something here for you. So the Israel-Hamas war has made political allies of some unusual bedfellows. By the way, this is from Reason.com. So, yet the strangest appearing on display is probably Queers for Palestine, most notably because those protesters would risk summary execution should they take their demonstration to the Gaza Strip. And he goes on to say how, people who are homosexual and trans, who are Palestinian in Gaza, will ask for asylum, will go to Israel for asylum because they get murdered. It's simply, so this guy continues to go on, and he talks about how the protesters appear to be blaming Israel for those attacks, which have included, among other things, Hamas militants murdering people, filming it, and putting the video on social media for the deceased family and friends to see. It's perverse. But to marry the cause to LGBT rights is simply unhinged for reality. In 2016, Hamas militants executed one of their own commanders, Mahmoud Ishtiwi, I hope I'm saying that right, Ishtiwi, for allegedly having sex with another man. His allegiance to the group was clear. Just 2 years prior, he had overseen 1,000 soldiers, and an assortment of attack tunnels. But not even his loyalty could save him after they lodged accusations that he engaged in homosexual activity. So right now, there are accusations. There's no proof from what I'm seeing. So prior to executing
proof enough for Hamas to execute him.
Prior to executing him with 3 bullets to the chest, Hamas reportedly tortured him by whipping him, hanging him from a ceiling for hours, and cranking loud music into his cell in order to deprive him of sleep. Last year in the West Bank, 25-year-old Ahmed Abu Marhia's severed head was found on the side of the road after he was murdered for being gay. The killer videoed the execution and shared it at social media. Now, the heart of the contradiction to this whole thing is that, like I said before, many Palestinians seek asylum in Israel. So at the heart of this contradiction is the tendency within social justice movements to pick a clear protagonist and antagonist, the oppressed and the oppressor, and to proceed from there in one-size-fits-all fashion. Some progressives decided long ago that Palestine is the former and Israel is the latter, which is the seed from which everything must grow. Palestine, then, stands not only for anti-colonialism, but also LGBT rights and reproductive rights, despite that those rights in any meaningful sense of the word do not actually exist there. Like, really? So let me see if I got this right. Just so I'm going to boil this down for you. You're rooting for you're an organization that's rooting for another organization that would kill you if you came there to support them. Right. I'm a little again, I'm still confused about that. And I'd like to go back to the first video where my original thoughts were about how these people were trauma-based. And again, what does the article say? Oppressors and oppressed. That's really what they're looking at. They've decided one size fits all. This is going to be what it is. And that's the shame of it all.
To a certain mindset, if the theory and reality contradict, you always go with the theory. This is probably the worst way to think, but it is the way many, many people think. And if you're going to say, Queers for Palestine, they have to deny or minimize or excuse what is actually being done in Palestine to people who are gay. But it's more than that, like, because of what we were talking about the last time. what is the world going to look like after the revolution? After the revolution, Palestine, Gaza, whatever, are going to be a wonderful place for people of all sexualities. Because when the new world is ushered in, not only will the oceans be made out of lemonade, but all people will delight in having to do all sorts of work. They will, I think what Fourier had said was that it's going to be an orgiastic joy to go out to the fields and pick cherries, because they'll be transformed by living in the new world that the left constructs for everybody. Naturally, since the only authentic identity, according to queer theory, the only authentic identity that people can have is a queer identity. And since the people in Gaza are people, their only authentic identity is queer. And it's going to be a wonderful place in Gaza for people of all sexualities. You see, the world is going to be so completely transformed. This is why Queers for Palestine makes sense to a certain point of view. Once you accept that the revolution is coming, once you accept how wonderful the revolution is going to be, and once you accept what we have to do to the people holding up this revolution, then, and only then, will you understand where they're coming from. The left, ever since Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a French philosopher in the early 1700s, and he could be considered one of the founding fathers of the left. He was a rotten individual, completely convinced of his himself being a wonderful human being who could love others better than anyone else could love them. Meanwhile, he treated them like garbage. And one of the things we learn from Rousseau is to completely distrust these incremental changes. The world slowly improving itself because we discover this works better than that, and that works better than this, so we should go with that, and we'll produce more and have more, and things will be more fair. Just the world will be a little bit better here, a little bit better there. And Rousseau taught us not to trust that. Instead, what we need to the prize we need to keep our eyes on is the complete transformation of the world into something that is utopian.
Okay.
And that's how Queers for Palestine is thinking.
Well, I'm going to go back to the theory versus reality idea. You know, there was a time when, you know, the U.S. Army was basically all white, and if you were somebody of color, you pretty much like a cook or a janitor, basically, in the Army. That's what it was. And in the 1950s, they integrated, the Army. And everything that they were saying about blacks and whites mixing in the Army is what they were saying about the gays in the 90s, right? Don't ask, don't tell, can't be open and whatever, You know what's funny? The reality on the ground is that the first army in the world to have open homosexuals in their combat units was Israel.
The Israeli army, it must have been. Yeah.
It was the Israeli army. The first army to have openly trans people, the Israeli army. Isn't that interesting that Queers for Palestine are so against Israel? You want to know something? It confuses the hell out of me. If you're gay in Gaza, you go to Israel for asylum. If you want to be a member of the armed forces, you can do it in the Israeli army if you're gay. Okay. Why are we going for Palestine? Because we're seeing the world the way we want to see it, not what's on the reality on the ground. I mean, personally, when I hear Queers for Palestine, and I see all the evidence that I've seen so far, I think it's even deeper than oppressed versus oppressors. I think it's just straight up anti-Semitism. It's just like, it doesn't make sense for me, because there's this blind hatred that goes with it. You know, it's like our babies were beheaded, our women were raped. They would like, there's crazy stories out there. You know, on video. You know, Hamas went into someone's house. They broke into their house, killed the husband, threw a baby into an oven, and then turned it on, and then raped a woman to her death while the baby was screaming in the oven. Those were the things that she died to. And when I see people like Queers for Palestine rooting for them, they can kiss my lily white ass. Right? You've lost anything with me. There's nothing. That is what we're fighting. And that is the reality on the ground. And when you're living in a theory-based thing where you're like, oh, well, it should have this utopian society, and it's got to be our way, though. You're an idiot. Not only are you an idiot, you're anti-Semitic, and it's like you're not even seeing the reality on the ground. You're just not.
Or you are and don't care.
I have a question for you. How many Queers for Palestine actually went to Palestine?
Well, podcaster Tim Pool has volunteered to fund, I think he volunteered $100,000 to send as many Queers for Palestine to finance a protest in Gaza.
And how many went?
None went, and he was roundly condemned for doing it. Because remember, the revolution hasn't happened yet. Palestine has not been transformed into utopia yet.
First off, when the Jews left Gaza, right? We had a thriving business where we exported fruits and vegetables around the world because of how well we're doing it. Now, when we left Gaza, we made sure that they had the ability to continue the business. It was handed to them. You could have made the Gaza Strip into Singapore of the Middle East. Instead, you chose to burn that down. You chose to destroy everything good that was built to oppress your own people. That's what Hamas did, right? So, like, it's ridiculous that the facts in the ground don't even matter anymore because everybody's so into the theory. Everybody's so into what they think should be that they're not willing to look and see what the hell Hamas really is. People here have forgotten what terror is. This America in 2001, September 11th, we saw what terrorism is. That was a Tuesday for Israel. Why? Because of how many terror attacks we've been through. How much battles, how many wars have been fought simply just to protect ourselves. Small little country, roughly the size of Jersey, dealing with a landmass area of the continental United States, and like with a billion Arabs, many of whom scream, death to Israel, wipe them out, push them to the sea. Yet we're still here. Because what's the reality on the ground? The reality on the ground is this. While there are a billion Arabs, several of them have made a peace accords with Israel. Yeah. While there are a billion Arabs, and many of them do want to see us dead, there are Arabs right now fighting in the Israeli army against Hamas. You have Palestinians who have chosen the side of Israel and who said, hey, our life is better here than it would be there. We need to understand that. We need to understand that this world is not as simple as we want to make it out to be. When we talk about the woke movement's a bunch of idiots because they're not looking at the reality. If the woke movement truly looked at what the reality on the ground is, like when I look and see all these like so-called woke things and Me Too's and this, that, and whatever, like they're like, they beat down white men. Why? Because the white man's the oppressor, right? So no matter what, they just beat them down. Well, guess what? A lot of you have your positions because of white men. Nothing is as simple as this wants to make it out to be. It's a lot more complex, and it's a lot more nuanced than even I understand. And what I understand is still like more than apparently they do.
People want to understand the world so badly that they're willing to latch on to a theory. And I think what you pointed out about all that terror is what you can become when you hold on to that theory for dear life, no matter what else, no matter what you see. So, I mean, if you want, people could just read the academic queer theory, the critical theory. Just go to the original sources. Go look at the journals if you want to see what it is that the woke left really believes. None of it's complicated. It uses a lot of big words, but those big words are just there to hide the fact that it's really, really weak thinking. And all it is these people are the oppressors, these are the oppressed, the oppressors can do no right, the oppressed can do no wrong. And when you start thinking like that and you label certain people the oppressed, and all of a sudden you see these supposedly oppressed people doing the most awful things you could possibly imagine, you can't call it wrong because the theory says it's not wrong. So, go have a look if you don't believe what I'm saying. Don't take it from me. Anyway.
Listen, folks, this is just like a drop in the ocean of what's really going on, right? When we're talking about Queers for Palestine, you know, it's like I told you before, like I quoted an article off of Reason.com. We need to understand that the reality on the ground is more important than the fantasies that people want to push, than the theories that are like not proven or just downright idiotic. We need to learn more, and we're not going to continue with this. I think this is the last, video on the topic. But if you guys have comments, we're more than happy to talk about them and, go further on with it. All right. I want to thank you all for listening. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you are, and y'all have a great day.
Please remember to like and subscribe, comment down below. Oh, and Bias Incident, Due Process, or my 2 books I recently released. My 3rd book is coming out soon.